Hi there, it's Kevin with the Rogue Market here with another video with the cards that synergize with Modern Horizons cards being spoiled. Now let me give you a disclaimer. I'm not necessarily saying that you should go out and buy these cards. Use this more of a thought experiment rather than, oh, we need to pull the trigger on these cards. There are a lot of people disappointed by my last video where I was doing just that. I do think there were some awesome picks, and there are some cards that are starting to go up like Cloudstone Curio that we picked last time. So, take it for what it's worth. Take it with a grain of salt if you don't think these cards are going to go up. Usually when a card comes out of a new set, it is going to cause cards to go up of older cards, regardless if it sees play in Modern or not. I think the people were too hyper-focused on that, saying that I think that there'd be these new decks that were going to be spawned up because of cards that were coming out of Modern Horizons. For a lot of times people forget that the casual crowd drives a lot of the prices of Magic. In fact, owning a local game store, I can tell you without a doubt that casual players outspend the modern players probably 50 to 1 with how many customers I have that will just come in because, oh, look, I opened this card out of the pack and I now need to build around this bad card and all the cards that go around it. So for what it's worth, just take it for someone with experience that the more cards printed is better for these older cards, even if they slightly synergize. Do not underestimate the commander crowd. Do not underestimate the casual crowd. So this video is going to be kind of on the same lines as last one. These are just quick picks. I'm not giving you my blessing that you should go out and spec like crazy into these cards, but it uses as a thought experiment if nothing else. This synergizes with this. It helps you find other patterns, and market trends are just that. It's just pattern recognition. It's being able to get ahead of what you think people are going to start to build when they do build around these decks. And that's why I love Commander. The Commander a lot of times just has to have just the slightest synergy. It doesn't even have to be good, just the slightest synergy and the card will go up. All right, so let's start with Unbound Flourishing. This card is going to spike a ton of cards, and it's good to start to identify them. Two of the ones that I've looked at so far are Nissa, Steward of Element. Really like Nissa, Steward of Element. It is a X-Spell Planeswalker, and it really synergizes with it because if you can pump a ton of mana into Nissa, the zero ability is going to allow you to then start putting out creatures every turn. If the top card of your library is a land or a creature card with converted mana cost equal to or less than the number of loyalty counters on Nissa, then you just throw into play for free. So if you ramp up Nissa, it's every permanent or every creature, if you're a high creature based deck, is going to get you onto the battlefield. So also the -6 ability is not terrible if you just pump a bunch of mana into it and have 10 damage on board right there. The other one, it is starting to sell quite a bit because you can actually check this on TCG Player. If you search by cards rarity and then just start scrolling through, and then you can search by popularity or most cards sold, this one's actually starting to sell a lot. So these are being bought. Altered Egos. Let's just check Card Kingdom right now to see what their stock is like. It's interesting to see if Card Kingdom's selling them too. It doesn't appear that Card Kingdom has movement unless they had a ton of copies of these Altered Egos. So yeah, I think that there's a promo version of this too, I believe. Can't remember if this one was or not. Anyway, these are the type of cards you want to start looking at with the X spell in them that do something. Altered Ego, of course, will copy something and add with additional +1/+1 counters. I think that one has potential to go up because of the Unbound Flourishing. Do I think this is going to see play in Modern with that combo? Probably not. The other end of this with the instant or sorceries being copied with X spells, this is something you should definitely look into as well. What is it? Experiment 1? Is that the not Experiment 1? That's the creature. I'm trying to think of the Is It spell, X in red and a blue, and then you X on the top X cards of your library and cast all the instant sorceries with converted mana cost X or less. That gets doubled with Unbound Flourishing. This thing is going to cause a lot of cards to spike. Maybe we'll have to do an entire video or a live stream or something where we can identify these cards, and yeah, it's going to cause a lot of brewing. All right, so on to the next one, which is the Farmstead Gleaner. There's a card that's already starting to spike, so if you're a little bit behind, I think you should get in on this. I think the Urza is also spiking the card. This is Grand Architect. So Grand Architect and Urza gives you another way to tap your artifacts for mana. You can tell this little spiky here actually does look like it's going to get mainly because of Urza, but this is also going to cause more of these cards to be bought out. So the whole combo with the Farmstead Gleaner is if you have it out with Grand Architect and you turn it into a blue creature, it ends up being infinite +1/+1 counters. So it says 2 and untap, put a +1 counter on the Gleaner, and then the Grand Architect says tap and untap blue creature control to add 2 to your mana pool. Spend this ability only to cast artifact spells or activate artifacts. So that is an activated ability. So you tap it to add 2, untap it, tap it, tap it, untap it, tap it, tap it, untap it, and there you go. That's exactly how you get it to have infinite +1/+1 counters. If you have something that triggers off +1/+1 counters, then that could be an infinite combo that actually wins the game there. However, there is a lot of other synergies with the Farmstead Gleaner. You can look at a Pila Pala type deck and see the combinations of what people use with just the untap ability. Personally, I've used these type of cards in experimental Kraj decks, so it ends up being infinite mana as well, with Kraj getting the activated ability of a big mana generator and then having an ability where you can untap it. So one of them that I can think off the top of my head is Viridian Joiner. Experimental Kraj and Farmstead Gleaner ends up adding a ton of mana because the Experimental Kraj gains the Viridian Joiner's ability and then adds for that excess mana to then untap it and create infinite mana. So there will be some demand for cards that work around Farmstead Gleaner. Maybe people will look back at Experimental Kraj and build decks around it. So Grand Architect's the one that I like the most, that just has that kind of 1-2 punch with the Farmstead Gleaner. All right, the next one is Battle Screech. Battle Screech has a lot of cards that I think could synergize around it in Modern. I do think it's Modern playable. And the card that I like the most, because it already does see play in some tokens builds, is the Smuggler's Copter. Let's see if one's actually shown up here with so there's a Soul Sisters build. Now, it doesn't look like we've seen any. Mono White Legends has the Smuggler's Copter, but we have seen some black-white tokens in the past run the Smuggler's Copter, and that's where I like it in a black-white tokens with Lingering Souls and Battle Screech. They both get insane synergy with Smuggler's Copter, basically making them free spells from your graveyard. So I like this as a Modern shell. Again, I don't know if it's going to spike the price of Smuggler's Copter. This one's more of just a thought experiment of looking at the synergies and identifying the synergies, and this is a good one. All right, on to the next one. This is Fallen Shinobi. I think that this will breathe new life into ninja decks in Commander. So there's a ninja that tutors up other ninjas. Of course, there's tons of ninjas, but the one that I think is kind of undervalued at the moment is Higger, the Stillwind. So this one has a spike last time the Commander deck was printed, and didn't go up as much as I think a card like this would go up, because the supply was pretty low. It actually went up the least out of most of the ninjas. So I like Higger. Higger can actually tutor it up. I mean, maybe you could build a ninjutsu deck where you can then now give it unblockable and grind out your opponents. It's a bit of a stretch, more than a bit of a stretch in Modern, but casual decks are going to want to build this little synergy with Higger and Fallen Shinobi. So it's another ninja that adds to the mix. It's actually a zombie ninja, so that's a pretty cool tribe pairing with it. And Higger can tutor it up, and other ninjas can work with it. And there is, of course, Yuri, that is the black blue ninja commander that could actually go up because of this as well. Again, just a printing of a card leads to people, oh, wow, I'm going to see what ninjas do. And they're like, wow, there's a ninja commander, I'm going to build it. That has an impact on the market, believe it or not. Here's another demon ninja that can be worked with it, and a bunch of ninjutsu cards that are referenced here that I think will lead to more ninja tribal base decks. All right, on to the next one. This is Ren and 6. So Ren and 6 might be able to breathe new life into the Seismic Loam deck that existed in the early days of Modern. So I think that it's a good time for Seismic Assault. One of the main reasons I was looking at Seismic Assault, the price of this is actually very, very low. It's because it was printed in Ultimate Masters. So Ultimate Masters crushed the price of Seismic Assault. It's kind of at its lowest price it's ever been. You can actually get these at Card Kingdom for looks like they're selling. So Goldfish says they're 35 cents. They've already raised up to 49 cents. And other people must have the same thought that I do, that a Seismic Assault deck can actually work while you actually have the bear token generator as well. That could be the other card with a Ren and 6 type deck to just give you that just renewable resource of being able to return lands from your graveyard to your hand and then pitch them, return them, pitch them, return them, pitch them. So keep your eye on Seismic Assault. The next one is the Mox Tantalite. So Mox Tantalite people have been writing off, but I actually do think it works really good with like Electropotence and this gem here with the As Foretold. So As Foretold is starting to have movement again, And this is at least a mana generator that you can produce the first time you have As Foretold. So either you have Ancestral Visions or a mana producer. And I think it actually does work pretty well because the As Foretold decks do typically like more mana to then cast some of the other cards, like Cryptic Commands eventually want to be cast in As Foretold decks. Let's see what the As Foretold decks are currently building. This one's just, it looks like just Restore Balance is the last one. I have just seen a spells-based decks with the As Foretold, but I mean, this deck might just want a Mox in it. I think it can actually utilize it. It can be pitched to... no, it can't. Yeah, it can be pitched later on to Greater Gargron when you sacrifice it to remove the Suspend. And it can ramp out the Jace the Mind Sculptor if you get it on the right sequence, or it can just be used immediately to then add more mana to cast even bigger spells and whatnot. I like it more of a spells-based deck. We've seen them before, not the Restore Balance per se, but just casting a lot of spells with As Foretold. And I think that it has been a while since I've seen the Cryptic Command deck that runs with As Foretold, but it might be something that could push it over the top by having that mana generation. All right, the next one is King of the Pride. Again, do not write off the casuals. They're going to see this cat and they're going to want to build cat tribal, whether it be a constructed deck, whether it be a commander deck. They're going to want things that produce cat tokens. So nothing better than Brimaz. I still like the price of Brimaz. I was surprised that it didn't go up the last time the cats were... well, it did. It actually did. It went up here in Amaket and then went back down. But there's plenty of cats to synergize with Brimaz. Here's another cat that works well. There is some movement in the one that went out of the Challenger deck, the one that puts out the other 2 1/1s, and then they give all cats +1/+1. Regal Caracal, that's the card. That's starting to have movement as far as volume. Brimaz is a mythic out of a Born of the Gods. It's getting old enough to where a mythic can actually, be a decent amount of money, even if it doesn't see a lot of play anywhere. I don't think this is going to lead to any sort of command or any sort of modern deck that's viable. I mean, a 2/1 is pretty vulnerable. And again, there's kind of the non-bow synergy with both of these being 3-drops. I mean, maybe you could go a Vilecat deck, an Aether Vilecat deck, and do some pretty neat stuff with it. But I think it will lead to more sales of Brimaz, which of course will outstretch the supply, and Brimaz will go up because of King of the Pride. All right, so on to the next one, and this is just cards that are synergizing around Ayula. Many of these have already spiked. The first one being Bearscape. Bearscape has gone all the way from a bulk card to a $12 card. And so if you can go to your bulk bins, I highly suggest ripping these out as, it's a pretty decent card with the new commander, and this will lead to commander this is the first legendary bear, well, second one, but it's really the legendary lord bear that people are going to build bear commander decks with. And I think it's going to be one of the go-to commanders that game nights. Apparently there will be an episode with Ayula that will be showcased because they're going to use one of all the legendaries that can be used in that pod. And so it's going to lead to some of these cards seeing camera time. A few of the ones that I figured are kind of undervalued, I'd target the foils or Kamal's Summons. This is being bought up very, very quickly. If you even go to Card Kingdom, they are out now of the foil. So if you can pick these up in bulk bins or check your local game store for these foils, get on them before the price spikes for the foil version. The normal version's okay too because an uncommon out of Onslaught is pretty good. The supply is not very high of that. All right, the next one would be Collar of the Claw. Collar of the Claw is still undervalued as far as the Commander version versus the Legion version. This is another card that is having a ton of movement. It is a flash elf, but it enters the battlefield. You put a 2/2 green bear creature token on the battlefield for each non-token creature put into your graveyard from the battlefield this turn. So if you have ways to maybe sacrifice a bunch of weaker creatures that may be ramped, or at least it allows you to re-add a bunch of green bear token creatures. There's some little synergies with the fight on Ayula that you can have some of your bears fight and die, and then at least you get some other bears back when you cast the Collar of the Claw. The thing is, there's not a lot of bear token generation. This is one of them, and even though it might not be one of the better cards, it's still one of the few cards that produces the bear token. So with having to build a 100-card commander deck, there's going to be slim pickings. It's going to feel like how pirates and dinosaurs were before they got enough. The other one that I lastly want to talk about is the Grizzly Fate. This is another foil that I think is pretty decent to target. The normals too aren't bad from Judgment. Judgment is an uncommon that we know can go up in value. The only thing that I do suggest, like holding off, is this could easily be a card that is printed in this set. Threshold, have we seen any Threshold cards yet? I don't, but I think Mero said that they didn't need to have 3 of the mechanics, that there can be 1 of just that mechanic. And so you put 2 green bear tokens into play for 5 mana, and you flash it back for 7. And if you have Threshold, you put 4 instead. So you can get 8 bear tokens off of Grizzly Fate. Again, it's not the greatest card, but there aren't a lot of bear token generating cards. And this will go in the commander deck, so I do expect this one to go up. It seems like the trajectory was kind of weird anyway. It looked like it was going up regardless. And it started going back down here. I don't know if the foil market just suffered from Dominaria to War of the Spark or not, and that's what it went from going down from 2 to 150. This is just typical of like low supply cards. Go over here to Card Kingdom, and they are sold out and moved up their price. So there is movement for this card as well. Last is the Words of Wilding. So Words of Wilding is next time you draw a card this turn, you put a 2/2 green bear creature token into play instead. So any sort of card drawing engine, you can see there's movement here, and the foils have gone crazy. So I think the normals are the best way to get into this now, as the foil price has gone through the roof. So once again, we can go back over to the normal and check the Card Kingdom. And I think the Card Kingdom's actually out of stock of them as well. Let's just look and see with the words of. And again, I'm not sponsored. I don't even care to promote Card Kingdom. The whole reason why I show Card Kingdom is this is the site of all the Timmies. This is where they go first. This is when you sponsor things like the Command Zone and Tellurian Community College, Timmies aren't really concerned with their wallet. They don't shop around. That's what makes them a Timmy. And the first place to go is Card Kingdom and buy Card Kingdom gets bought out for these type of cards. And speculators like it too, because sometimes Card Kingdom is the lowest place on the internet. They have very good customer service and free shipping, over $25, and it's just I spend a lot of money myself at Card Kingdom, purchasing spec-based cards. So there you have it. Tried to run through these pretty quickly with the cards that synergize with cards out of Modern Horizons. Again, take this for what it's worth. I'm not giving you my blessing that you should go buy out all these cards. The bear ones are more interesting because I think the commander crowd is going to buy them out. The other ones, there are some lofty picks here like Smuggler's Copter and Bramaz that probably won't pay off, but it's still a good thought experiment. And this is one of the whole points of this channel, is trying to figure out the trends, trying to figure out the synergies, and get good at that. And once you're good at that, you can actually use this sort of information in the future for future spikes. So I know a lot of people were disappointed in my last video. We'll have to do a recap of that to see how the dust settles, because again, a lot of the cards are starting to go up that I picked in my last video, like the Cloudstone Curio. Anyway, this has been Kevin with the Rogue Market. Thanks for watching.